cases on campus last week. It did end up shutting down 2 studios. It sent home another 25 siblings and staff members, which is the most complicated part of all of this. The individuals that were positive were only on campus 1 day. And to our knowledge, there has not been any community spread, which is fantastic. But we still have to go through all these steps and processes. It's just now at day 8 of the close contacts. So the whole reason there is a quarantine of 14 days is to ensure that for some people, they don't get ill until the 13th or 14th day. So those families are all watching their learners and so forth, and they will be back on campus on March 9th. Because of that, and because of how it affects the staff on the campus, we currently have, I think it's 10 staff members out of the building right now due to that and other quarantining. We will not be able to open hybrid this coming Monday. We are delaying it by 1 week. And so starting hybrid on March 15th. So a week from this Monday. So let's talk about what else is going on too, and then we'll kind of come back to that. As you've seen from some of the emails that we sent out, there have been some changes. Firstly, I'm hopeful. I asked my coworkers today to keep an eye on Governor Holcomb's press conference at 2:30. I'm hoping that they put teachers now on the priority list. In Indiana. And that would be really helpful. Of course, we've had, I don't know, a dozen or more of our staff members get vaccinated, have had both sets of vaccines now, mostly from volunteering for hours and hours. And we've had some of our Kentucky staff members that have been able to be vaccinated in Kentucky. So that all feels going in the right direction. I'm hopeful today that Governor Holcomb will say teachers will be opened up. I may be wrong. I may be saying all this and I'll be completely wrong, but I am hopeful. So hopefully that happens today. I want to talk just a little bit about COVID testing, because for many of us, we've been so excited that there's now rapid antigen testing and rapid testing in our community. That makes that really helpful for us to know right away what we learned from the kiddos. But some of you may already know all of this information, but those of you that don't, I just want to talk through this a minute. So there are 2 types of COVID test. There are the diagnostic test and the antibody test. Antibodies is like if you've had it before, and for some people they can be tested to know if they're positive, but no one really does that in the United States. The diagnostic testing. There are 2 types of diagnostic tests. There's the there's the molecular test, otherwise known as PCR, and there's the antigen test. So the antigen test a lot of times are combined with the rapid test. Many times a rapid test, one that you get back in just a few minutes or maybe an hour or 2, are oftentimes an antigen test. The PCR test, still the gold standard. It has to go away. It has to be read in a lab with proper PPE. It has to be taken by healthcare professionals. Antigen tests have more flexibility and they are less accurate. And so if you go to a place like the Little Clinic, the Kroger Little Clinic, you will get an antigen test. And by some regards, a third or more of those could be false negatives. So there's also a percentage of false negatives in PCR test, but it's a lot less. Now, nobody knows any of this for sure right now, and nobody knows what's going to happen with the variants. But what we know right now is that the PCR test, that is the test where they have to take the swab, a medical professional takes the swab in PPE, it goes away to a lab, there's lots of protocols in place. It takes usually 2 to 4 days for you to get that test back currently. And then there's the antigen test. As you've heard from the emails that we've sent out, Community Montessori will start having antigen tests. We hope soon. We keep saying they're coming from the Department of Education. It's called Binax as the brand that we will be using. And the whole point of that is to try to catch someone that might be positive as soon as possible. What you don't want to do with an antigen test is to rely on it for being negative. I'm going to repeat that. A rapid antigen test, there are rapid PCR tests. We'll talk about that in a minute. A rapid antigen test, you do not want to rely on that for people to be negative. So if you have antigen tests should only be used for people that have symptoms. So at Community Montessori, we'll be using the antigen Binax test if you give us permission to for your child. If they have symptoms at school before they go home, we hopefully will know something. It's a tool, right? So if they come out positive, we can be pretty sure they're positive. Not positive, but pretty sure. And then we could start contact tracing right then, send those people home that were close contacts, and then we move on. So if you went to another place and got a rapid test, you should ask them, is this a PCR test or an antigen test? If it's an antigen test and that's negative, that makes you feel good for now, but we would still need one of two things from you. One of three things, actually, for your child to return back on campus. Either you need to get it verified with a PCR test, if they have symptoms, if they've been tested with a rapid antigen test and it's negative, step 2. They can't come back anymore with step 1. It's just too much out there. It's a recommendation from the United States Department of Health that even for us, we cannot take the antigen test negatives as negatives. One of these three things has to happen. Go get a PCR test, which those are the ones like at the Optum site, that's a PCR test. Stay out for 14 days or get a doctor to say that's not COVID related. So those are the three options moving forward. So starting tomorrow, we'll put this into effect. And I just wanted to take a minute to kind of talk through it with you. And I'm going to pause and let Melissa open up the chat to see if there's any questions about that specifically. Because, you know, I do think it's going to be one of those things that we're all, you know, there weren't rapid antigen tests and now there are, and now we're like, what, we can't use them? Well, yeah, still go, I would go get a rapid test, but I'm not going to use it for sure as a negative unless I do one of those other things first. So any questions about that?
Who will be performing the test at school?
So there's been 3 staff members that have been trained. So the training for this Binax antigen test is very specific. So there is so many hours of video, and I'll let Melissa or someone else on the call answer that because I have not been through the training for that. And then they have to pass a test. And once they've passed the test, then they meet the criteria to give the test at school. Melissa, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, it's actually 2 steps beyond that. You take like a paper test, but then you also have to show with one of the sets of kits. So they're divided into boxes. So per box, you can have a tester, which is why we have 3. And then we'll have to show from that box that we can get an accurate positive with a sample swab that shows a positive result and an accurate negative. So you have to do a in-person thing. I don't know, I don't have the right word, but you know what I mean.
And so we have 3 staff members that are ready to go as soon as the Binax tests are delivered on campus.
We had a question if the test will cost the families, and I just put in the chat that it's not being charged to families because it's provided by the Department of Education.
That's right. We can only give these tests to kids that are on campus or staff members. And only if they're symptomatic. So it cannot be given. It's not supposed to be given for close contacts, for instance. So, you know, it's only for symptomatic individuals. But even remember, with symptomatic individuals, 1/3 about or more are false negatives. So it's not a foolproof method. It's just a tool. So
Would you share again about the new requirements for multi-layer masks?
Yes. Let me say one more thing about the test, and then we'll move on to that. Another name for the PCR test are molecular. So I'm just going to drop in the chat. I think this is a pretty good site that gives information about the PCR versus antigen, molecular, and so forth. So you might find that helpful. So anyway. Okay, so make sure I cover all my points for that. Okay, I'm going to get to your question in 1 second, Amy. So I want to just mention that this has also been a little bit of confusion. Parents that are positive, which is happening right now, by the way, on-campus kiddos, that cannot quarantine from their children, meaning that they cannot stay in a room, way away from their child, like they're still caring for their child. Let me ask this question to the group, see if you can put an answer in the chat. How long does the child need to stay off campus if they cannot quarantine from their positive parent or positive family member? Someone's got a hand up, but anybody want to put something in the chat? Anyone want to give it a shot?
We got one saying 24 days.
Thanks, Sarah. Anybody else?
"14 days after their last exposure day, 14 days after negative test, 14 days after parent quarantine finished, 14 days, 10 days after symptoms."
So the Indiana State Department of Health and belief system on this is that because the child, let's just do child parent for simplicity, the child could actually contract the virus on day 14 of the parent, that their quarantine time starts then. That's day 0 is the last day of the parent's quarantine. So it's 14 days after that last exposure. So for most kiddos, that's 28 days before they can come back on campus. So we are so fortunate that we have so many families that are really great communicators. We haven't had anyone that's tried to do any of this horrible stories I've heard about. We have families that are great partners in this. So just want you to know. I mean, I know that all these numbers are thrown around a lot, but it is the only thing that protects the community if we follow this process. Now, sometimes there's a blended family and the child will go to the other family member and they won't be in contact, and then they just are under that 14 days. So that would be 14 days after the last exposure. So yes, starting last week, we asked, because it is also the recommendation from the Indiana State Department of Health through the CDC guidelines. From this point forward, all on-campus humans will wear at least 2 layers masks. So that does not mean you have to wear 2 masks. Some people are wearing 2 masks, but you do need to wear 2 layers. And so like the mask I have on right now is a 3 cotton layer mask. So they're all, sewed together. And it also has a pocket for me to put a filter in, which would make it a 4 or 5 or however many layers the filter is, layer mask. So at least 2 layers, that's what the recommendation is. Of course, it needs to cover their whole face. There's a lot of allergies going on right now. And if you have a child and it's been confirmed that they do not have COVID and they are back to school and they have a runny nose, please make sure you have them bring multiple masks with them, because it doesn't work very well if it's wet all the way on the inside. So we do have some extra masks here. And like we said in the email last week, feel free to reach out if you need some masks. We don't have very many really tiny masks. We're getting some more of those. And we're supposed to be getting more masks from Indiana Department of Health. Those have also not been received yet. So anyway, any more questions about the masks? Many of the staff are wearing KN95 masks now, so we have these for the staff. And we've specified, and we're supposed to be getting more from the Department of Ed, a very specific KN95 mask, as you may have seen on the news, that some of those are not appropriate, and so we have made sure to purchase ones that are in the CDC recommended brands. So a couple other things, international travel, we talked about this before, but per the CDC guidelines, there's a 7-day quarantine when you come back from international travel. And so we just want to remind you that if one person in your house is quarantining, then your child is also quarantining, so they're not coming on campus during that time. I will tell you that I've heard from many staff members being worried about returning from spring break. And so I just want to take a minute to talk about spring break. Of course, we can't control or are trying to control what anyone does on spring break, but if you want to bring your child on campus, please make sure you're doing your due diligence. And so, if you're visiting people outside of your household, if you're going to be, non-mask with people outside of your household, please prioritize the on-campus community. Please keep your children home longer to make sure that they aren't getting any symptoms. That's the part that we really want to encourage. Let me give you a quick number update. I'm going to give you what, on the 22nd, when we met before, what the numbers were and what they are now, just so you can kind of see the comparison. So we usually use that unique number category. And then I'll give you that number first. So in Floyd right now, the unique positivity rate is 12.3%. 3 weeks ago, it was 11.2. So the unique positivity number is up a little bit in Floyd. In Clark, it's 12.9. Again, 3 weeks ago, it was 13.3. So it's down a little bit. Harrison County is 18.3% positivity for unique individuals, down from 20.2. a few weeks ago. The 7-day total positivity. Now, I've asked this question to the Indiana State Department of Health, and I don't have an answer yet. If you remember the graph, and I'm going to show it to you in a minute, it talks about NAAT tests, which are molecular tests. And I'm pretty sure this all positivity number also includes antigen test, which makes this number more complicated. But I'm just going to give you that right now, and then we'll talk about it. So Floyd, total positivity. So those are people that take the test multiple times. 4.3, it's down from 7.85, so quite a bit down in Floyd. Clark, it's at 5.6, down from 7.8 a few weeks ago. And Harrison County is at 6.8% positivity total individuals, down from 9.63. Weekly new cases. In Floyd, over the last 7 weeks, we've had 115 new cases, down from 159 a few weeks ago. Clark, we're at 125 new cases, down from 172. And Harrison County, 155, down from 199. And so I'm going to share my screen with you just a minute. You see that graph okay? Okay, so that's that's our pandemic plan. This is just being added to the pandemic plan. This is the graph that I shared with you at our last meeting. So these are the school indicators that the CDC has recommended. So the total new cases per 100,000. So all of Clark, Floyd, and Harrison have over 100 new cases in that 7-day period. So we're in the high transmission area on this graph in all 3 counties. Percentage of COVID tests, again, it says NAATs, which would be the molecular test. And I'm pretty sure Indiana lumps all the tests together. So we don't really have that number. But if we use all positive numbers, we're, mostly in this category, moderate. If we use the unique individuals, we're back over here at the high transmission. So this is the new thresholds from the CDC that started on February 18th. So I just kind of want to show you that even though our numbers are going in the right direction, which is fantastic, as far as the threshold indicators, we're still at a high transmission to a moderate to high transmission. So I just want us to be aware of that. And of course, none of us really know what's going to happen with the variants. And I'm just going to stop sharing just a second. And as of right now, if you go to the COVID cases caused by variants, Indiana's in the green, which shows that we have one, let's see, for Indiana specifically, we have 19 of the variants right now, positive variant cases in Indiana. Of course, nobody really knows. We think that the vaccines are still going to cover the variants. There's 3 variants that are being followed right now from the CDC. But we just, have to keep that awareness up too. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up for any other questions or comments from the group. Anybody have anything right now? So just to summarize, hybrid plan to start on March 15th, which is a Monday. Please read your emails and make sure that you're following all the parameters. For some of you, you haven't been on campus at all yet. For some of you, you haven't been on campus since last October or November. So please make sure that you relook at the pandemic plan, the on-campus commitment form. All of that will be sent back out to you multiple times. But what we would hate to do is to get back on campus and people not follow those parameters and we would be back off campus again. So please each do your part in that. That would be fantastic. Anything else from the group? All right. I'll stay on for a minute if anyone has anything else. Have a great day. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. See you later.